Hello trainers, and welcome to part 3 of my series of drawing every single Gen 3 Pokemon with a Paldean / just a randomized type form. If you're liking the series so far, please leave a like, I would appreciate it a lot. And as usual, I'm going to encourage everyone to draw your own type forms for the Pokemon in this video. And please tag me on Instagram or Twitter if you do, because I want to see them all. But let's just get right into the video. So last time we stopped on the X-Cloud line, which if you know your decks means we are on Makuhita. New type, rock. So there was a really big construction company working in mines or building houses or whatever, and they really needed a Pokemon that could deal with heavy rocks. So they took in obviously a fighting type because they're good at breaking things. And then over time those Pokemon, which happened to be Makuhita, over time became rock experts and then slowly adopted a rock type. Of course, this means that Makuhita has a very calm temperament and they're super helpful, super strong and so on. And of course, Makuhita evolves into Hariyama. I tried to make the clothes mimic like a builder rather than a sumo wrestler, and instead of like the bald sumo hairstyle, it's got like a helmet on its head. If you're a worker and you have a Hariyama, it's proof that you're like a really reliable builder. In fact, few people even trust a builder unless they have a Makuhita or Hariyama. And the shinies are red instead of blue, and this is a reference to Ruby and Sapphire because red and blue, which is also in itself kind of a reference to the first games. And we're moving on to the next Pokemon in the Pokédex, which is a little baby Pokemon. It's Azurill. New type is Fighting. I actually love that I got this type because normal Azurill is kind of a little crybaby. So I thought it would be nice to toughen it up and actually got it to fight. Instead of being like the victim, it's just going to defend itself and fight back. And I did this in the obvious kind of comical way to turn the tail into like a boxing glove so it punches people with it. It's a very popular activity among like little school children to have their Azurills fight. So it's a really common sight on schoolyards to see them having boxing tournaments with their Azurills during like recess. And perhaps if you were a kid who were really lucky you had a shiny one, in which case the colors are swapped and your Azurill is red with a blue boxing glove. Next Pokemon is everyone's favorite, Nosepass. New type is Grass. So we have a Grass Pass, a Nosegrass. This is one of those type swaps that kind of just make sense. They just translate really well. Just turn a rock into wood. Perfect. Cover it with some moss. And it also actually works really well because of like old sayings where like if you have a tree, moss will only grow on the north side or the south side, depends on where you are. I feel like every place has their own like saying, and it's not necessarily true, but it makes the lore make sense that Nosepass is suddenly like a wooden Pokemon pointing out direction. Other than that, it's kind of the same Pokemon in that it mostly stands still pointing towards whatever direction we're going with. And for the shiny, I thought it would make the most sense to just have it be like a different kind of wood and different kind of moss. So it's one of those shinies that's not too different. Next in the dex is a Pokemon that I like a lot, which is Skitty. And the new type is Ghost. So because Skitty is kind of based on a pincushion, I thought why not make it like a little voodoo doll so we can keep the pin theme. And also give it a little bit of a stitched up Frankenstein kind of deal, while still looking kind of like a plushie. So not to completely just rip off Banette's lore, but I think this is the kind of Pokemon that just kind of lends itself to being like an abandoned plush that came alive and became a ghost type. But unlike Banette, it didn't come alive for like vengeful reasons. Instead, it's just like a cheerful Pokemon that came alive because it was loved so much that all of the positive energy turned it into a living Pokemon. And it evolves into Delcatty. It doesn't have like the same stitches and stuff because I think this is a more like put together Pokemon. It kind of becomes more living or real compared to Skitty that's kind of still in its plush form, so it kind of evolves into more of a real cat. And let's look at their shiny forms. They're just pink and purple like their real counterparts because I really wanted to see what it would look like if they kept their original colors. Next Pokemon is Sableye, which is another of my personal favorites. New type, Ice. A long time ago, some Sableye were drawn to the cold, frozen north because the giant ice crystals looked like, crystals. Which, as we all know, is Sableye's favorite food. And they stayed there and just kept eating ice crystals until they turned into an ice type. Ice Sableye live in big packs and they tend to be really peaceful because they're living in like an icy area, so everything around them is just their favorite thing, ice crystals. So they don't need to fight, and they don't need to like eat poor carbons. And they're no longer dark type, so they don't have that dark in them. And the shiny is just purple because I'm boring and I like regular purple Sableye. Next Pokemon is Mawile, and the new type is Fire. I really didn't know what to do, so I just ended up turning into like a chili pepper thing, which I know can come up a little bit more as a grass type, but what can you do? I mean, you can redraw it, but I'm way too lazy and have like 100 Pokemon to draw, so I'm not gonna do that. And it's not terrible. So if Mawile manages to bite you with its hair, you will just be inflicted with a burn status immediately, which in-game would probably translate to, you know, immediately burned on physical contact, something like that, like a special ability. And since this is technically for the Paldean region, you just know people would be eating it. They would be putting it on sandwiches. And they're stupid little sandwiches, and then they take the top part and just throw it away, just like everyone does when they're making a sandwich. And the shiny form is of course just a green chili pepper instead. Next Pokemon I believe is a popular one, it's the Aeron line. And the new type is Dragon. So we're turning it into this region's Dragon type, I guess. I tried to not go overboard and just slightly make it more dragon-like. I ended up picking the color blue simply because its normal form just has a blue eye. And I didn't want it to have the same, you know, gray steel color. This line is already kind of living the life of a dragon type. They're in a cave, like closer towards the end of the game, just before the Elite Four, so it was probably just a natural development of their type. And it evolves into Lairon, and again, just the same kind of Pokemon, but just slightly more dragon-like, but you can't really tell yet, because it doesn't look that much like a dragon. But it will of course evolve once again into Aggron. Aggron is finally a bit more dragonified. That's a word, it's definitely a word. To be able to fly, it's a bit smaller and lighter than a regular Aggron, but it's not less aggressive. You can see Aggrons just battling all over, they love to fight. Being dragon types, they're super proud of their strength, and they can be really difficult to train, which is why only the best trainers have them. They're the type of Pokemon that will abandon their trainer if they deem them too weak. And then we have the shiny forms in all red. Remember when we were talking about Makuhita and it being red and blue as a reference to Ruby and Sapphire? Well, I kind of did it again. Because I don't know, I just had an idea on my mind and I'm like, yeah, let's make blue and red Pokemon, and here we are. Moving on to the next Pokemon, which is Meditite. And the new type is Poison. Meditite actually has a big appetite. It only eats poisonous things and it only eats one bite at a time, so it can slowly build resistance. In ancient times, this used to be a very popular Pokemon among like leaders and kings, so they could have a Pokemon to test their food, so it's not poisonous. And it evolves into Medicham. All of the poison it ate as a Meditite led to it creating its own as a Medicham, so the more poison it ate and the more kinds it ate, the more it can produce as a Medicham. I like the purple and green combo, it looks very poisonous and dangerous. And the shiny forms are green, and then Medicham has the purple and green kind of swapped, because I think those are the two like poisonous colors. I don't know, maybe pink as well, but I went with green, because you can never have too many green shinies, am I right? Next Pokemon, Electrike, and the new type is Water. I ended up going what I would call the Vaporeon route of making it like a dog-like creature with a fishtail. I know certain people isn't really into this look, but I like it. And making this actually made me want like a proper sort of dog water type Pokemon, because I think it would be really cute, and there are a lot of dogs that are like swimming dogs. They really like water. Make it happen, Game Freak. Anyway, I would describe water type Electrike's personality as a playful shark. Like it keeps you on edge, cause you know it can bite you. And it evolves into Manectric. I like keeping both of them colorful colors, cause you know, like a coral reef, it's very colorful, so I like that. And I made the legs to mimic like giant shoulders. They're not literally shoulder, they're not like a slowpoke situation here, cause I thought it would be cool and quirky in a funny way. And the shiny forms are a little bit more on the bluer side. And of course the Shelder lookalikes are also kind of mimicking shiny Shelder. Next we're gonna do two Pokemon because I feel like they belong together. It's Plusle and Minun. Starting with Plusle, and the new type is Ghost. I really tried to keep all of the elements, just making them all more ghostly. I think turning the crosses little plus signs on the cheeks into bones was probably the best idea I've had all day. I wanted to keep it red so it could still be a counterpart of Minun with a blue. And I also wanted it to look like really faded and ghost-like. And then I got Minun's randomized type, and it's Dragon, and I was like, how am I supposed to make a Dragon Minun and also make it a counterpart to Plusle? So I kind of gave up. But I did the same thing, I just like kept it a Minun and just slapped on some dragon features. It looks like they're cosplaying or something, I don't know. At least they're both like creatures from folklore, you know, you have ghosts and you have dragons, so they're kind of like a fantasy version, I guess. I really wanted them to have like a clever duo, like if I had like water or fire, I could have made them, so yeah, whatever. This is what you get when you randomize types. Let's look at the shinies. I made a ghost whiter and then I just made a dragon blacker. Moving on, we have another duo of Pokemon, it's Volbeat and Lumiose. We're starting with Volbeat. And the new type is Dark. Given that I'm removing the bug type, it's gonna look slightly odd. But what I did is I turned it into like a comical little vampire. Because this time I really wanted it to play into Lumiose. I really wanted to keep them a duo that makes sense. And it kind of does. Because Lumise's new type is Fighting. So I turned it into a superhero. Which is kind of obviously based on the Powerpuff Girls. Because they're the best. Because this way you have the movie/comic book villain and superhero. So they can still have a relationship where like one of them gets into trouble all the time and the other one comes to stop them. And these Pokemon, they kind of pretend like they dislike each other, but it's also kind of like a game they play. They both actually really enjoy these roles. And they're very popular Pokemon to have among actors because they're natural acting Pokemon. They like being overly dramatic when they do things. And for the shinies, I ended up not having any big color swaps. I kinda just made Volbeat a little bit more purple. Then I made Lumiose just switch the blue and purple. I don't know, I can't just turn all of them into red and blue. Next Pokemon is Roselia. If you don't like Roselia, you have bad taste. I'm sorry, that's just the truth. And the new type I got was Ground. So what I did is I took the cactus route. I don't know if that's clever or boring, but it's what I did. Because I couldn't really separate the flower qualities and make it ground, which is gonna have sand for arms, I don't know. Allegedly they've been around for a really long time in deserts. But they're so rare they were only recently discovered to exist. They're very righteous Pokemon. They come in as a lone ranger to stop all of the problems and fightings of other Pokemon, and then they leave in the sunset. In the shiny version, simply has different colors on the flowers. Next Pokemon is Gulpin, and the new type is Psychic. Okay, I'm not the biggest fan of what I did to this Pokemon, but such is life, I guess. I tried to turn it into like a fortune teller old lady, if that makes sense, like you would have hidden away at the market, so you can predict your future in exchange of too much money, and they're only making it up anyway. So it kinda lives like those fortune tellers. It really likes shiny things. It will predict the future for you if you give it a shiny thing. So it's a hoarder, it's got like a pile of whatever shiny things it's gotten. Then it evolves into Swallow. I don't really like how it turned out, but it does have like a Jinx quality to it, except Jinx is actually better. And you know, the bar is low when like a Jinx is better. But it's actually a really sweet Pokemon. It likes to predict happy futures for people. And the shiny forms, now I had already accepted that I wouldn't like these Pokemon. So I just tried to make the shinies ugly on purpose for no reason. Moving on to the next Pokemon, Carvanha. New type is Electric. If I'm not mistaken, this is the first time I've gotten Electric in this series, maybe? But yeah, Electric Carvanha is one of those Pokemon that's no longer Dark type, so it's a lot more friendly. And also, because they're an Electric type that lives in water, around water types who are known to be weak to Electric types, they're just never in danger and they don't really need to be aggressive to defend themselves. They only have one thing on their mind, and that is racing. They're constantly in like swimming races against each other or other water type Pokemon or whatever Pokemon that comes along. And of course humans have developed like an entire sport around training and raising their Carvanhas to be the fastest. But even more so for the evolution. Sharpedo. Sharpedo races are incredibly popular and a tourist attraction. Trainers actually race with their Sharpedos that are like on top of it using Surf. This has been done for a really long time, so to differentiate between the Sharpedos, it's a common practice for trainers to give their Sharpedo a silly name. The more unique, the better. Just like with, real horse racing, because I think it's funny. And the shinies are sort of references to their normal colors, like Carbona's got the red and the sort of teal, Torpedo's got the pinkish purple, because sometimes it feels like that kind of ties in the evolution. You still have the old DNA colors left, if that makes sense. And you know what, guys, this was actually the last Pokemon for today. Naive as I am, I'm still holding on hope that maybe one day someone will make their own type form so I can actually showcase it in the video. But we've still yet to see that day, because nobody sent me any Pokemon, but it's fine. I'm only slightly sad about it. At least I get comments and likes and subscribes from all of you great people, so thank you! Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time when we see Pokemon such as Flygon and Altaria, 2 fan favorites. I will see you guys then. Bye!